Okay, so you want to own a thrift store where the inventory is free. People just bring it to you. Boxes of clothes, old lamps, a blender someone used twice, dropped off in your parking lot. No invoice, no supplier, no cost of goods. You put a price tag on it, someone else buys it, and the difference goes straight into your pocket. Zero inventory cost, infinite margin. It's the cleanest business model in retail. That's the pitch. That's the fantasy that makes people Google how to open a Goodwill. Here's what that fantasy skips over. 90% of what gets donated to a Goodwill store never sells on the floor at full price. Somebody still has to drive a truck to pick it up. Somebody still has to sort it, tag it, hang it, and eventually throw a third of it away when nobody wants it. And the organization running the whole operation isn't one company at all. It's more than 150 separate, legally independent nonprofits, each one fighting for survival in a business that looks like charity and runs like a logistics company. Some Goodwills post genuinely impressive numbers. Some are quietly hemorrhaging cash on real estate they can't afford to maintain, and at least one of them is currently being sued by its own employees. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly how a store that gets its inventory for free somehow still runs on razor-thin margins, and why the most controversial number in this entire industry isn't what Goodwill charges you at the register. First, the thing almost nobody realizes, there is no single company called Goodwill. Goodwill Industries International is the umbrella brand, the logo, the licensing body. But every local Goodwill, Goodwill of Southern California, Goodwill of Central Florida, Goodwill of Greater New York, is its own separate 501c3 nonprofit corporation with its own board, its own CEO, its own budget, and its own bank account. They pay dues to the parent organization for the right to use the name. Beyond that, they sink or swim entirely on their own. That means a thriving Goodwill in one city and a struggling Goodwill 2 states over aren't the same business with different luck. They're genuinely different companies that happen to share a smile logo. Across the whole network combined, Goodwill's retail operations pull in somewhere between $6 and $7 billion a year, with total revenue across the entire organization landing around $8.5 billion once you count government contracts and grants. That sounds enormous. Spread across more than 3,400 stores, it works out to roughly $2 million per store per year in revenue, which sounds healthy until you see what it costs to generate that number. So let's talk about what you actually need to open one of these stores, because the free inventory pitch conveniently skips the part where everything else costs money. You need a building, and it needs to be big. A functional thrift store isn't a boutique. You need enough square footage for a sales floor, a donation intake bay, a back-of-house processing area, and storage, easily 15,000 to 25,000 square feet for a full retail location. Leasing that kind of commercial space runs anywhere from $10 to $25 per square foot per year, depending on the market, which means your rent alone can run $200,000 to $500,000 annually before you sell a single shirt. You need a donation dock with a covered drive-through, because if someone has to carry a couch through the front door, they'll drive to the dumpster instead. You need industrial shelving, garment racks, hangers by the tens of thousands, a pricing station, and point-of-sale terminals wired into a network across every location in your region, because pricing at Goodwill is not random. Most regions now run their pricing through centralized software that tracks what similar items sold for, how fast a category is moving, and adjusts prices across the whole chain in real time. That system isn't free either. And you need trucks. A lot of trucks. Because unlike a normal retailer, Goodwill's supply chain runs in reverse. Instead of paying a distributor to deliver product to you, you're sending vehicles out into the community to go get it, staffing donation centers scattered across the region, and running a logistics network that exists purely to move free stuff from someone's garage to your sorting floor. Now here's the part that breaks the free inventory fantasy completely. The moment a donation lands on your dock, it becomes a cost center before it becomes a revenue source. Every single item has to be touched by a human being. Somebody unloads it. Somebody sorts it into categories: clothing, wares, electronics, books, furniture. Somebody inspects it for damage, stains, missing parts, safety recalls. Somebody decides what it's worth and tags it. That is enormously labor-intensive work, and labor is where the real cost of this business lives. A single Goodwill can process tens of thousands of donated items a week, and the sorting and pricing labor for that volume runs into the hundreds of thousands of dollars annually per store before you've paid a single cashier to ring anyone up on the floor. And here's the twist nobody expects. A meaningful chunk of what gets donated is garbage. Broken electronics, stained mattresses, expired car seats, waterlogged books. Somewhere close to a quarter of everything dropped at the donation dock gets diverted straight to a dumpster, and disposal isn't free either. Large Goodwill regions pay real money in landfill tipping fees just to throw away things people thought they were being generous by donating. This is why the labor question inside Goodwill has become the single most explosive controversy in this entire industry. For decades, roughly a third of local Goodwill organizations have used something called a Section 14C Special Wage Certificate, a provision buried in the 1938 Fair Labor Standards Act that allows an employer to legally pay a worker with a disability less than minimum wage based on a productivity assessment. In practice, that has meant Goodwill employees earning as little as 22, 38, or 41 cents an hour, sorting and hanging the same donated clothes as everyone else on the floor. At the exact same time, Department of Labor filings have shown Goodwill executives, plural, across different regions, earning total compensation packages north of $500,000, and in at least one Southern California case, over $1 million a year. That gap, disabled workers earning cents per hour while regional CEOs earn 6 and 7 figures, is the single ugliest number in the entire nonprofit thrift industry. And it's the reason multiple states have passed laws forcing local Goodwills to phase the practice out entirely. By 2026, most regions have voluntarily dropped it, but the reputational damage and the lawsuits are still working their way through the system. Now let's follow an item through the actual revenue engine, because this is where the business gets genuinely clever. A donated shirt lands on the sorting table. If it's a recognizable brand in good condition, it goes straight to the retail floor, priced by an employee using rules built off historical sell-through data, not a guess. It sits on the rack for roughly 3 weeks. If it sells at full retail price, that's the best outcome. Full margin, minimal handling. But most items don't sell at full price in 3 weeks. When the clock runs out, the item doesn't get thrown away. It gets pulled and shipped to what Goodwill calls the outlet, and what everyone else calls the bins. This is where the real engine of the business lives. At the outlet, nothing has a price tag. Everything gets loaded into giant rolling blue bins and sold by the pound. As of recent pricing, that's somewhere around $1.50 to $2 a pound for clothing and soft goods, less than $1 a pound for books and housewares. Staff wheel fresh bins out onto the floor every 45 minutes to 2 hours, and the moment they do, resellers and treasure hunters descend on them like it's a live auction. Because for professional eBay and Poshmark sellers, the outlet is the cheapest sourcing pipeline in American retail. A jacket that couldn't move at $15 on the main floor might weigh 2 pounds and sell for $3 at the bins, and Goodwill still profits on it, because the labor cost of processing it was already sunk the moment it hit intake. But even the bins don't catch everything. Whatever doesn't sell, there gets pulled one final time and sold in bulk by the pallet or by the truckload to textile recyclers and international liquidators. According to the Secondary Materials and Recycled Textiles Association, roughly 45% of that material gets resold, either domestically or shipped overseas to markets across Central America, South America, Africa, and the Middle East. Another 30% gets shredded down into industrial rags. The remaining 20% becomes fiber filling for insulation and furniture padding. A single loaded truck can carry around 42,000 pounds of baled clothing, and Goodwill gets paid by the pound for that too, pennies compared to retail, but at zero marginal labor costs since it's already been sorted once. This is the actual secret of the business. Goodwill doesn't sell an item once. It sells the same donated pile of goods up to 3 separate times at 3 completely different price points to 3 completely different types of buyers, and only fully writes something off as a loss after all 3 markets have said no. There's also a fourth channel most people never think about: ShopGoodwill.com, the organization's own online auction platform where rare, valuable, or collectible donations, vintage electronics, designer goods, antiques skip the floor entirely and go straight to auction against national bidders who will pay far more than a local walk-in customer ever would. So, with 3 or 4 monetization layers running on inventory that costs nothing to acquire, this should be one of the most profitable retail models in America. And in a sense, it is, on gross margin. But gross margin isn't the same thing as the number that actually matters, and this is where the fantasy collapses completely. Because everything that made the inventory free also made it slow, unpredictable, and labor-heavy in a way that no traditional retailer would ever accept. A normal clothing retailer orders exactly what it needs, in exactly the sizes and quantities that data tells it will sell, from a supplier with a contract and a delivery schedule. Goodwill has no control over what shows up on its dock. One week it's 10,000 hangers of usable clothing. The next week, it's a truckload of broken printers and a mattress with a mystery stain. You cannot forecast donations the way you forecast a purchase order, and that unpredictability is baked into every layer of cost, from staffing the sorting floor to renting warehouse space for the overflow. Run the actual math on a mid-sized regional Goodwill. Revenue from a well-performing store cluster might land around $2 million a year per location once you combine retail floor sales, outlet sales, and the small trickle from online auctions. Against that, you're paying real estate costs of several $100,000, sorting and processing labor that can run into the high six figures once you account for the volume of donations flowing through a single hub, transportation costs to run donation trucks across a metro area, disposal fees for the roughly quarter of donations that are simply trash, and the retail staffing needed to actually run the floor and registers 7 days a week. On top of all of that sits the corporate and program overhead that funds Goodwill's actual charitable mission, job training, placement services, and support programs for people with disabilities, which is the entire legal justification for the organization's nonprofit status and its exemption from federal income tax. After all of that, the operating margin on a typical Goodwill location is thin, often in the single digits, not the eye-watering number you'd expect from a business that pays nothing for its raw materials. The free inventory doesn't disappear into pure profit. It gets absorbed almost entirely by the cost of handling something nobody controls, sorting it by hand, and giving it 3 separate chances to find a buyer before it's finally written off. And the business is not immune to disruption. For most of the 20th century, Goodwill's real competition was the local landfill. If people didn't donate to Goodwill, the stuff simply got thrown away. That monopoly on secondhand goods is gone. Poshmark, ThredUp, Facebook Marketplace, and Depop have given people a direct, profitable alternative to donating anything valuable. Why drop a pair of barely worn sneakers in a Goodwill bin for a tax receipt when you can sell them yourself for $40 on Depop in an afternoon? That means the quality of what actually reaches Goodwill's donation dock has been quietly declining for years, as the most resellable items get siphoned off before they ever arrive. At the same time, the resale market itself has become fiercely competitive. ThredUp's own research shows the U.S. secondhand apparel market grew 14% in a single recent year, its fastest pace in years, driven largely by Gen Z and millennial shoppers drawn to thrifting for sustainability reasons rather than just price. That's genuinely good news for Goodwill's top line, and it's part of why the organization posted a record $7 billion in revenue recently, with sales at its 3,400 stores climbing roughly 7% year over year. But it also means Goodwill is now competing directly with venture-funded resale apps for the exact same customer, using a store format and a pricing algorithm built decades before anyone had a smartphone in their pocket. The structural risk sitting underneath all of it is the one thing every single local Goodwill depends on completely and controls not at all: the willingness of ordinary people to keep dropping bags of stuff off in a parking lot for nothing in return. There's no contract, there's no purchase order, There's no supplier relationship that can be renegotiated if volume drops. If donation habits shift, if secondhand app culture keeps pulling the best items away from the dock, if a recession makes people hang on to their old couch a little longer instead of upgrading, the entire revenue engine slows down at the exact same moment operating costs, rent, labor, transportation stay fixed. That is the quiet fragility hiding underneath a business that looks from the outside like it can never run out of product. So here's where this actually lands. Owning a Goodwill-style thrift operation isn't a story about free inventory turning into free money. It's a story about converting an unpredictable stream of donated goods into revenue through sheer operational discipline, three-tiered pricing, and enough scale to make thin margins add up to real dollars, all wrapped inside a nonprofit structure whose tax-exempt status depends on plowing a meaningful share of that money back into job training programs rather than shareholder returns. It works at scale across more than 150 independently run organizations, generating billions of dollars in the aggregate. But it works because of relentless logistics, not because the inventory happened to be free. And the uncomfortable truth sitting right in the middle of the balance sheet, the gap between what some of those organizations pay their executives and what they've paid some of their most vulnerable workers, is the reminder that even a business built on donated goods and a charitable mission still runs on the same cold arithmetic as everything else in this world. Somebody pays. It's just rarely the person you'd expect.